Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of my team selector ahead of the game at home to Southampton tomorrow in the Premier League. Chelsea are back, Premier League football's back, which is good. The international break can be frustrating, but I think there were positives within there, especially from a Chelsea perspective, seeing both Mason Mount and Reece James perform well for England. Also Kai Havertz and Timo Werner not only linking up well together the other night for Germany, both playing well. I think Kai had a really good international break, so hopefully all those players feeling confident for the weekend. But on top of that, I think you have to contrast that with the negatives of this international break. Edouard, Mendy getting injured, the concern over Ben Chilwell's fitness, N'Golo Kante, and the fatigue of players moving forward in what's going to be a very intense period for Chelsea. 7 games in 21 days before the next international break. That's both in the Premier League, but also the Champions League too. I'm going to get into all that stuff, my predicted lineup, thoughts on the opposition, and all that good stuff. But before we do, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also hit the like button if you're enjoying the content because it helps out the channel as well. Also want to promote CFC UK 217, the latest edition of the CFC fanzine. Lucky to be a contributing writer to this fanzine. My piece this month is about Callum Hudson-ODOI and why, for me, timing is so essential at the top of the game, especially for young players breaking into top teams. And I think that, you know, looking at Callum's career, and I sort of make comparisons to the likes of Harry Kane and Marcus Rashford, their trajectories at their clubs, and going through his injury issues. So please go and support the fanzine if you want to read my article, as well as other great articles in there as well. Details of how to buy the fanzine will be in the description box below, so please go and check it out and support CFC UK. But let's get into injury news and team news, basically. Mendy, although there was some optimism earlier in the week he could be available for this game, Frank Lampard confirming in his pre-match press conference that he won't be ready, won't be back for this game. He was a little bit non-committal in terms of when he'll be back. I mean, it does seem like Sevilla will be the game he'll return. It doesn't seem to be that drastic an injury, but you never know. Obviously resting him for this game. He's not ready for this game, which is a negative, but that's a situation. Let's just hope he'll be back for the next game. In the Champions League as well, Thiago Silva not ready due to international commitments with Brazil the other night. That's a negative too, because it will disrupt the backline going into this game. I think the positive is Hakim Ziyech will be in the squad tomorrow. Lampard did state he isn't ready to start the game, but he will be featuring, hopefully getting some minutes, maybe off the bench, a bit like Christian Pulisic against Crystal Palace. But as I said in the intro, the international break, the stat schedule, I think sort of that complication with wanting continuity but having injuries, having fatigue to your team. I think this is going to be the difficulty of this season for a lot of managers, and dealing with this hectic schedule. Chelsea are going to have to rotate. There's no way around it. There is no way Frank Lampard is going to play the same 11 week in, week out for the next 7 games. It's just not going to happen, and I think you have to understand that as a fan, and that can be frustrating if you want to grow that chemistry. I think that there needs to be a bulk of players that start regularly, but I just think that's the case, and you don't know with injuries how that's going to impact the team, fatigue, form, results, all these things are sort of uncontrollable elements going into these games. So I hope that the bulk of the team tomorrow for Lampard isn't too dissimilar to the one that started against Crystal Palace, because it works so well, and I think there's a bulk of players available for the game. But I just think you need to understand that going into these weeks. And as well, Frank Lampard's still finding his best 11, so a lot of complications within there to deal with. But looking at Southampton, I think they're a very interesting and dangerous opposition, a bit like Palace were on the break. I think Southampton is sort of the opposite, because I expect they're going to press Chelsea a lot more than Crystal Palace did. I don't expect a low block. Southampton will feel confident in themselves that they can come to the bridge and get a win like they did last season against Chelsea. And sort of the confidence of Chelsea having that break between the international break, that momentum, has it stalled? That's the concern going into this game. And also that defence being tested once more, whether Kepa or Caballero is in goal, and obviously having to make a change at centre-back with Thiago Silva not being available. And I also think just in terms of that midfield balance, it works so well against Palace, but we weren't pressed. Jorginho was able to get on the ball a lot. Will we have that same space tomorrow? And of course, you've got Danny Ings, who's an amazing goal scorer in the Premier League. And I'm sure if we give him any chances, he can score for Southampton tomorrow, so we've got to watch out for that. And a high pressing system under Hasenhüttl, and sort of that question of midfield balance will be posed. I think this is a good litmus test for Chelsea and the midfield balance, whether Jorginho and Kante can be that pivot potentially in a 4-2-3-1. But going into my 11, obviously 4-2-3-1, I think Frank is sticking with this formation unless there's any drastic injury, say Kante isn't available for the game. I think he'll stick with that formation. Going in goal, I think it is the toss of a coin between Kepa or Caballero, but I do think Frank will go with Caballero because he went with him before, just before Mendy arrived. I think it was the West Brom game, wasn't it, that Caballero started. I wouldn't be stunned if Kepa starts. As I say, it's toss of a coin at the moment. I think Kepa would have gained some confidence over the international break for Spain, but I still would go with Caballero because I think he just instills a bit more confidence and maturity in that back line. The back line, trying to keep it as similar to the Palace game, even without Thiago Silva. So Dave will keep his place. James had a really strong international break. He did obviously get in that really good performance for England and I think that will give him a lot of confidence and belief going forward. But I still think Dave, based on his pre-international break performance against Palace, will keep his place at right back. Kurt Zouma, of course, scored last game at a really dominant display against Palace, keeping his place too, alongside Fikayo Tomori. For me, Tomori is my third choice. If we don't have SIlva or Zouma available for the game, Tomori is the first one for me that has to come in. I know Christensen had an all-right game against West Brom, but for me, I like Zouma and Tomori. I still think it's one of our best partnerships we have currently, and I'd like to see it reinstated for this game. Ben Chilwell, obviously there were some concerns over his fitness for this game, but seems to be ready for the game. Man of the match last time. I mean, he was incredible against Palace, and you just wonder, especially against maybe a higher pressing team, how he'll cope with that, and also the space he could potentially get on that left moving forward, because he was such a threat last time, and it was such a good performance. Let's hope he can continue that tomorrow after recovering from injury. Midfield pivot is going to be the same as last time, Jorginho and Kante. And I think Georgie in this game will be tested in terms of being pressed a little bit more heavily, and that will be a concern in terms of balance and him being exposed. But I do think on the other end, as we saw with Tottenham against Southampton a few weeks ago, with that high line, I think Georgie finding off the ball runners like Christian Pulisic if he starts, or just attackers in front of him, the pace of Chelsea's attack can be really threatening. And you hope Georgie can really excel in this game once again, because he had such a good and confident display against Crystal Palace, one of the best he had. But this is the litmus test, isn't it? When he comes up against an opposition that isn't just going to sit back and allow him the ball, how can he cope? That's going to be the difficulty and challenge tomorrow, alongside of course N'Golo Kante. There are some fitness concerns based on not playing the other night for France, but I think he will be ready. Frank didn't rule him out of the game in his press conference, so I think he'll start the game alongside Georgie. The three behind the striker, yes, Ziyech is the big news of this game, but I don't think he will be starting tomorrow. I think Frank will want to be a little bit hesitant. As I've said on the channel before in relation to Christian Pulisic, I don't think that's a negative. I think with the amount of games, trust me, Ziyech will be starting a game very soon, but I think Callum Hudson-Odoi will retain his place on the right. Kai Havertz at number 10 created 2 assists for Germany. Let's hope he can have that similar link up and similar effect, potentially getting his first Premier League goal for Chelsea as well tomorrow. On the left, I am going to bring back and start for the first time this season Christian Pulisic. If he's ready, getting back into that team. We know how good he is. The potential high line of Southampton could be really helpful to Christian Pulisic, getting in behind, and we know his anticipation for goals. I cannot wait to see Pulisic back in his starting 11, because I think he can be a game changer like he was at the back end of last season for Chelsea. And up front is going to be Timo Werner. I want to see Timo in his main position. I think the best I've seen him so far this year was against Brighton in that opening game. That was the most threatening he looked on the break, and with that speed and going at that defence. As I say, if Southampton don't get the high line and sort of high press right, Chelsea can definitely expose that tomorrow, and sort of Werner can be deadly on transition for Chelsea. And I think that, of course, I've spoken about this before, concerns over him not scoring so far, but when you look at the XG philosophy here, great account and great book on expected goals, definitely suggest you go and read, saying here Timo Werner has only had one shot worth more than 0.15 XG in the Premier League this season, so he's struggling for clear-cut chances, and that's not a surprise. And I think getting him in a more central role, I think, can definitely provide that. And if you do have Ziyech coming into the team, Kai behind him, Pulisic as well, I think Timo will start to find that space. I think I'd love to see, it'd be a little bit harsh on Tammy, yes, but I want to see Timo now as that main striker. I want to see that combination play with the likes of Pulisic, Havertz, Ziyech, Hudson-Odoi. I want to see Timo Werner as the main striker for Chelsea. So that is my team selector for the game against Southampton tomorrow. Let's hope for a really positive result once again, and good performance off the back of the Crystal Palace win. Please let me know your lineups for the game. But thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SON-ODOI, and I'll see you again.